Collecting video games is one of the most fun and expensive things you can get into. But it's really rewarding when you watch your shelves fill up with the stuff that you've accumulated over the years. And you really develop a sense of attachment to these games that you play as you go through life. And modern platforms really make it easier or easy to collect these games because they come in nice plastic boxes. They're pretty durable. You can keep these for a long time, and they will always look mostly pristine. But if you're collecting for older platforms, you're going to run into some problems when you get something like this. So this is a Game Boy Advance game, and the thing is, games didn't always come in plastic boxes. This comes in a little cardboard box, and the cardboard itself is actually kind of thin and flimsy. And so because this is a fairly old platform, and actually you have even older platforms like the Game Boy and things like the SNES and whatever, there's a very good chance that when you're trying to buy a game for these platforms, you're not going to get this box. This is something that a lot of people will just throw away, or it got too damaged and then eventually got thrown out because it was so fragile. So when you go and buy games for these platforms, what you might end up with is a collection that looks kind of like this, and this isn't really very easy to store in a way that's like nicely presentable. And so a few years ago, when I started collecting for the Game Boy, I actually took it upon myself to fix this. Initially I tried to look around for ways to store Game Boy games that felt right to me, and I found a couple options. I found something where you can it was like this structure that you can flip through the games and stuff, but that didn't feel right for putting on a shelf. And so I came up with this. This is my little Game Boy shelf, and I actually have multiple of them at this point. But this is something that I designed myself. I used a 3D design program. I believe it is something by AutoCAD, but you could use it on the web. And so what I did was I measured the Game Boy cartridges that I had. I excluded the little Game Boy ridge at the top because I wanted a way to pull the cartridges out. And I measured those cartridges, and I just designed a thing that has 10 holes that fit those dimensions, and got a little even border around them. And then I just had them 3D printed at a local library that has a 3D printing lab. But if you have a 3D printer yourself, obviously you can just make this at home. And that was about it. This is actually fairly easy. I remember I did have some trouble the first time I did this. The holes were too small. I couldn't fit the games in the shelf. But yeah, then I just adjusted the measurements a little bit. And I've had this for a while now. And again, I have multiple. If you look here, I have 2 more on this shelf here in different colors. I decided to make them a little different. I thought I'd go for a more colorful approach. But yeah, I have 3 of these, and I use them to store not just my Game Boy games, but my Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance games. And so it kind of looks like this. I have 9 games here. 1 is actually currently in the console itself. And they stick out just a little bit, so I can easily pull them out from the sides, and I can just put them back in. And they always have this nice little look. Of course, it's going to be a little different if you have games for other platforms. So if I grab my Game Boy Color, or this one that only has Game Boy Advance games, it looks slightly different, but the games still fit and they still have enough sticking out that I can easily grab them and pull them off so I can play them. So it works pretty darn well. There is a little bit of an exception though, because the Game Boy Advance games, so there's actually a tiny little bit of the difference in the thickness of the cartridges. So those games, the Game Boy games, are pretty snug inside these shelves, but the Game Boy Advance are slightly thinner, so they actually are quite loose. If I were to tilt this forward, the game will just fall out. So it's not perfect for all the sizes, but it still looks very good as a storage method. Now, if I wanted to make this perfect, and I would like to eventually, I just haven't gotten around to it, what I want to do is make these games more recognizable at a glance, because that's actually one of the goals. I want to be able to know what I'm pulling out at any given moment. And obviously like this, that's going to be a little difficult. But it seems to me like it would be a pretty easy problem to solve, because you have these little, the surfaces here, they're big enough that you could fit a logo, or if you want to make it simpler and you don't care about the looks, you can just write the name of the game. So you could have one A4 sheet or whatever size it is, a standard paper sheet. And you can just print a bunch of labels on the same paper, and you can cut them and stick them on here with some kind of tape or something. That would probably work just fine. And I want to do that at some point. I haven't gotten around to it, but this to me is an ideal way to store these games. And I just kind of wanted to share it with you. So like, if you think this is also cool, if you like this idea, I'm going to leave a link to the 3D model that I used for this in the description, so you can download it. And if you have either a 3D printer yourself, or you know someone who has one who can print this for you, you can just ask them. And like, this isn't like a huge material cost, so I actually don't remember the price very well, but I probably paid no more than $5 for one of these shelves. So yeah, like, this is a pretty cheap 3D print to get, and because it really is just a rectangle, so it's a fairly easy one to do too. Yeah, I recommend it. I really like this. I like that I made it, even though it is very simple. But I'm somewhat proud of the fact that I came up with this solution. But yeah, if you're looking for something like this, if you have a lot of loose Game Boy games and you would like to store them in a way that looks like this, the link in the description will help you. And that's it for today. I didn't have a normal topic for a video this week, so I just wanted to share this piece of my collection. I hope it helps someone out there. And thank you for watching. If you would like to subscribe to this channel, I would really appreciate that. I have a lot more content about Nintendo games and collecting and stuff. So yeah, be sure to do that. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.